All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And to try to prepare people for the Application and Website Development or AWD 1100 C Sharp programming class that'll be taught online during this summer, the summer of 2023, I've been kind of going over the chapters a little by little and giving some examples and explanation of what's going on here. All right. In this chapter, we've done the first four and the um, appendix. So I'm in chapter 5, control structures, and we'll talk about Boolean expressions, if, switch, a little bit on pattern matching, the three kinds of loops, or three of the kinds of loops, and look at the future value app. So let's do it like this. Let's go in where we've been, which is in here. Let's see. We redid that invoice total in the last chapter, so let's get rid of that one. And in here, we've got a test project and a test project 2. I'm going to make another test project. So I'm going to add yet a new project in here. Again, it will be a Windows form. In fact, let's do this. Let's make it a console project so you can see what a console looks like. So I'm going to choose console app.NET framework right here. C Sharp. And we'll just call this console. Yeah, console app 1. It'll be fine. Create. Now, there's not much to it. And when I run it, it's going to look pretty ugly because it's just going to be a black background with white text. All right. So let's do this. Let's, from the last program that we had, let's go in and create a random number. So I want to grab that from what we had before. Let's see. So that was in the invoice total, or was it? No, it was not. That was in the program we're in. So that was in test project 2. Yep, right in there. So this is how we created the random number. So let me steal all this code here. It's going to have to be, we'll have to make changes to it, but that's fine. All right, so we're in here. Now I'm going to get errors. Don't worry about it. So random, int the number. Okay, fine. So this is going to give me a random number that is between, this is going to give me a random number that is between 1 and 100. Okay? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say if the number is equal to 0, okay, then I'm going to say if it's equal to 0, I'm going to just say do a console.writeLine, and I'm going to say 0 is neither odd nor even. All right. Plus, I'm going to have a thing in here. I'm going to add 1 to my 0 count. I'm going to get an error because I don't have a 0 count. So let's do that right now. So I'm going to say int. In fact, we're going to make this global. So I'm going to come in here and say int 0 count equals 0. Okay, that error should go away now. I don't know why it's not. Int 0 count equals 0. Oh, this has to have the word static there. There we go. All right, let's make 2 more. So static int odd count. We'll call it odds count. Set that equal to 0. And static int evens count. We'll make that equal to 0. Okay, move these over. All right. So if it was a 0, we're saying 0 is not odd nor even. Otherwise, I know that it's not 0. Okay, so I'm going to say I'm going to say here int result equals the number modulo 2. If you take any number and divide it by 2, if the number comes back with no remainder, it's even. If it comes back with a remainder of 1, it's odd. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do this. I'm going to say if result equal 0, then I know it's an even number. So I'm going to come back in here. Oops. Try that again. And I'm going to say the number plus result plus is even. And I'm going to add 1 to my evens count. All right. Not event count, evens count. Otherwise, I know it's odd. So I'm going to say it's odd, and I'm going to add 1 to my odds count. Okay? So I'm generating a random number between 1 and 100. If the number I generated was 0, I don't know if I'll get a 0 here, but it's not odd, it's not even, and I'm going to add 1 to my 0 count. All right? Otherwise, I'll modulo it by 2. If there is no remainder, it's even. Otherwise, there'll be a remainder of 1, so it's odd. All right? And once I fall out of here, this else statement here, I'm going to put here console.writeLine 0 counts equals plus 0 counts. And we'll put the other 2 in here as well. Odds count, and that will be odds count. And then finally, evens count. And that will be evens count. Now, this will work. It's going to work, but it's going to be stupid output. I'm just telling you right now. And what do I mean? I have to put here a console.read line. Otherwise, the program's just going to fly right off the screen, which I don't want. Okay? All right. So let me save it. And let me run it. And I've got to tell it the program I want it to run, which is, what am I doing here? Let's see. I've got, oh, there it is, console app 1. So I want to make that my active project by saying set a startup project. Okay. So what do I have here? It says the number 1 is odd, and it added 1 to my odds count. That's totally fine. That worked great. All right. But the problem is, and I can run it again, and I don't like this that it says 1 again. I don't think that's right, but okay, it's saying the number 1 every time, so I don't know why it's doing that. I'm going to try something here, okay? I'm going to come in and I'm going to put this thing in here. I'm going to put this into a loop that says while, okay? And loops are determined by what's called a loop control variable, okay? So I'm going to come in here and say int LCV, which stands for loop control variable, equals 1. While LCV is less than 50, then I'm going to do all this stuff. So I'm going to generate 50 random numbers in here, is what I'm telling you. And at the end, what I want to do is I want to add 1 to LCV, and then see how many zeros I had, etc. Now, I don't know, will this work? We're going to find out right now. And where is, okay, we got that at the bottom, good. So let's run it. Okay, it's got the number 0 is even, which isn't correct. So it's giving me 0 every time, and I don't know why. So let's see if we can figure that out. Okay, we want to do this inside of here. So we want to do this in our loop. Okay, now let's see if that fixed it up. First, let's keep it simple. Let's just make it 10. So let's get 10 numbers. So file, save all, and let's run it. Now we're getting 1 and 0, which isn't right. All right, and it's got 1 as being odd. So my counts technically are correct. All right, so we come in here, the number equals this. If the number equals 0, so it should be coming in here and saying that it's not odd and it's not even, but that isn't working. So something is goofed up in here. I shouldn't have to do this all inside of here, but I can put it in here anyway. And I'm going to take why doesn't it like that? Clarity in the scope because the name is used in an enclosing local scope. Okay, so it doesn't like that. And I'm going to take everything that I've got here, and I'm going to make all this global. All right, so the number, the loop control variable doesn't have to be. So I'll make that in here. All right, so int the number, that's going to have to be static. All right, and so will that. All right, let's see if that fixed it. I don't know if it will or not. No, I'm still getting 1 and 0. I don't know why. See if we can figure out why. It's coming back up again. Let's see if we are, what kind of number we're getting here. So let's do this. I'm going to put in here a console.writeLine of the number. So I'm going to put in here, I'm just testing here. So test the number equal plus the number. All right, I want to see what's getting generated every time. So notice it is working. 31, 51, 63, 27. That's all working. All right. So I am getting a number that makes sense in there. So this is working. I should never be hitting this. All right. So if the number isn't 0, then result equals the number modulo 2. If the result is 0, it's even, otherwise it's odd. Let's run this again. That's odd, that's odd, that's odd, that's odd, that's odd, that's even, that's even. Okay, so it's giving me the right results. Okay, this shouldn't be saying the result is even. This should be saying here the number. And this we can change to the number and we can leave it the way it was. That's fine. All right, this actually is working. So let me get these right lines. Let's see. Yeah, this should be working now. This test I don't need in here anymore. All right, so let's come in. Let's try 25 numbers. All right, 25 is odd, 59 is odd, even, odd, odd. Looks like it's working. Looks like my counters are working. All right, I'm off by 1 in my count, but that's no biggie. We can fix that real simply. All right. So that's all working right now, but I'm not getting 0 at any time. So I believe it's giving me a number between 1 and 100. So I don't need to make this check. So I can come in here and do this right there. Now I can take all of this. That's okay. But I can take all of this and move it over 1 like that. And this will be less than or equal to 25. Let's make it 50. All right, then we're going to come back and look at the program. All right. So I'm just taking for granted that that does equal 50 there, and that 0 count is not needed here anymore. But you'll notice with the numbers that are being presented here, it looks at least as though everything that's supposed to be odd is odd, everything that's supposed to be even is even. Okay, so let me remove this line. Now let's look at the entire program. Okay. All right, I don't need a 0 count anymore. So when I did this originally, I created a number, I moduloed it by 2. Then I said if that number was, if the remainder was 0, it's even, otherwise it was odd. The problem is doing that, the way that it was set up, it wasn't in a loop. We didn't have this. Since it wasn't in a loop, it only ran once. Now we're telling it to do this 50 times. So 50 times generate a random number, 50 times take that number, modulo it by 2, 50 times check the result of the modulo. If the result was 0, say that it's even. Otherwise, say that it's odd. 50 times. Then give me a count of my total number of odds and my total number of evens. So this is one way of writing it. Okay, so right here what I'm doing is I am initializing the loop control variable. Here I am testing the loop control variable. And finally down here, I am changing the loop control variable. If I didn't put in this line, I'd be in an infinite loop. Don't want that. All right, so that's one way of writing this. This is called, just so you know, this is called right here a pretest loop. You make the test before you go into the body of the loop. What does that mean? That means that if I change this to 51, 51 is not less than or equal to 50. If I run this, all I'm going to get is my counts. It totally skipped the loop. Okay, that's one way of writing this. Let's do this. Let's take this line and this line. Let's comment both of these lines out and see if we can rewrite this as one line. So I'm going to say for int LCV equal 1, LCV less than or equal to 50 plus LCV. Let's run it. Just run it and see if it still works the same. And we got our odds and our evens. So in the first case, this was a while loop. You have to have 3 lines of code typically. You use 3 lines of code to do this. You initialize, you test, and you change. When you use a for loop, you initialize, you test, and you change inside of the same line of code. All right? So it works a little better, it's faster, etc. How about one more? We'll look at the one other loop, which is the word do. I need to uncomment this, and now I need to say while LCV less than or equal to 50, semicolon. And I need to uncomment that. I need an LCV. So let's see now if it works. My evens are still even. My odds are still odd. Okay, so what I've just shown you here are the 3 different major types of loops in C#. We'll go over these, each one of these, and then we will look at the if statements that are in here. Now, when we first did it, we had LCV equal 1 while it's less than or equal to 50. Do this. And then you saw if I made that 51, since this is what's called a pretest loop, since it's what's known as a pretest loop, when we made this 51, we never went into the body of the loop. Never. All right. In here, this works the same way in that if I uncomment this and I make this 51, and now let me comment that out, it's again not going to go in here, just going to give me 0 and 0, the values of my two counters. So both the while loop and the for loop are what are known as pretest loops. You test the value before you get into the body of the loop. The do while is a post-test loop. So even though it's 51 here, since I don't test this until the bottom of the loop, notice that when I run this, it runs through it once. It generated 77. It said it was odd. It added 1 to the odds count, and I'm done. This is called a post-test loop. Since you don't test the value until you get down to the bottom, you are always assured with a post-test loop that the value of the loop, or that the body of the loop, is always executed at least one time. All right. Now let's look in here. This is a simple if-else. You can have an if without an else. Let's take our whole else that's in here and let's comment it out. Now the only thing that should happen is if the number that's generated is even, it should print that. And if it's odd, it's going to do nothing because we commented that out. So it'll have my number of evens, and this number of odds should still be 0. Whoa, I'm in a loop. And I'm in a loop because I didn't take that line that said plus plus LCV and commented it, uncommented. So let's look. Notice now everything in here is even. So I got 31 even, so the 19 odds were just skipped. What if I reversed this? What if I reversed this and did my odds first? So I'm going to take this that's right here and remove it. And now I'm going to say here, if number modulo, if the number, oh, I've got result there. So if result is equal to 1, say that the number is odd, so we can uncomment that now. Else, paste that back in. Otherwise, we're going to say that it was even. Let me move this over. But what I want to do is I want to comment this out. Now I should only get odd numbers. And down here, for my evens count, it should be 0. There's my numbers. They're all odd. And my evens count is 0. So you can have an if without an else. All right. You can also have, oops, uncomment those. You can also have an if, and then you can do an else if, and you can have as many of these as you want. Else if result equal 0. And I can even put another else down here if I want. Else, and I'm just going to say console dot right line, and I'll say an error has occurred. Okay, it should never be hit, but I can do that. All right, so let me save this and run it. And I should never get an error has occurred. Here's one time, look, they each had 25. So there's an even, odd, odd, even, odd, odd, even, odd, etc. All right. So the reason I did that was because in chapter 5 of the text, we've gone over a lot of it. I mean, a lot of it already. All right. These are your relational operators. So when you're checking for equality, it's two equal signs. There is no triple equal like there is in JavaScript, just a double equal. So single equal, just one equal sign means assignment. Double equals means test for equality. A test for inequality is an exclamation point followed by an equal sign. The greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. I'm taking for granted you know what those mean. There are plenty of examples here. All right. So those are your relational operators. There are also logical operators. There are three of them. Actually, it says more, but there's really these three. And actually one of there's and, or, and not. All right. Now notice with the first two, conditional and conditional or, they do what's called short circuit evaluation. I want to say that again. All right. They do what is called short circuit evaluation. The reason that I'm telling you that, I sure hope I'm taping. Let me double check. Good. All right. The reason I'm telling you that is when you compare two things with an or like this. If the first one is true, you don't compare the second one because you don't have to. When you're doing an and like this, if the first one is false, you don't have to compare the second one. So for instance, if subtotal was 0, since 0 is not greater than or equal to 250, and it's an and, you don't have to check this one. If in here, if time and service was 2, it would be less than or equal to 4, so you don't have to check this one. Now, sometimes you might want to check both regardless. Always check both sides regardless. Then rather than using a double ampersand for and, you use a single ampersand. Rather than using a double pipe sign for or, you use a single pipe sign. All right. And finally, not is the inverter. So not true is false, not false is true. You can have as many of these things in a line of code as you need to. You're very rarely, if ever, going to see the single ampersand, single pipe sign. But if you've got nots and ands and ors, and if you didn't use parentheses, you do the nots first because they're the most restrictive. You do the ands second because they're the second most restrictive. And you do the ors last because they're the least restrictive. You can always change that around by using parentheses. Again, by default, nots are performed first, then ands, then ors, but you can use parentheses to change the order. All right, so I've shown you already the if-else, and they show it here as well. So in this case, if it's just one line of code, you don't need to use the curly braces, but I do anyway. I always put it in curly braces. So if subtotal is greater than or equal to 100, you'll do both of these. What if it's not greater than or equal to 100? What if it's a 99 or less? You don't do anything. Here, if it's greater than or equal to 100, the discount percent is 20. But if it's less than 100, the discount percent is going to be 10. Here's one of those else ifs, and as I mentioned to you, you can have as many else ifs as you want. If you've got one or more else ifs, it is not mandatory. It is not mandatory that you come in and actually put in here a final else. Typically you do, but you don't have to. Here is what's called a nested if. It's an if inside of an if. So you only get to this if right here if this if is true. If this if is true, you do this if. If that is true and that is true, you do this. If that is true and that is false, you do this. If that is false, you do this. If that was too much for you, we're going to go over plenty of examples in class. Now, in the old version of the book, this is one of the reasons I didn't want to use the old version anymore. They did not talk about a switch statement here. They went and they did not talk about a switch until much later in the book, which I thought was silly. All right. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take the code that we were working with before just a minute ago, this console application. All right. And I'm going to comment out the whole flippin' thing. All right. I'm going to comment out every bit of it. So let me just highlight all of it here, everything. Every line that's in there, except for the console.readline at the end. And I'm going to comment this out. All right. Now I'm going to add new code in down here. And I'm going to say string size equal console.readline. I'm going to put in here, enter your size. Like that. In fact, we're going to do this a little bit differently. Don't worry about it. We're going to get it just a second. All right, I'm going to put in here string. How do we want to do this? We'll just do string size. All right. And then I'm going to do, so the size isn't equal to anything now. Let's see, what is the best way to do this? I was wondering why that didn't work. I thought we could do it like this. Console.readline. Okay, you're going to be reading something in. Okay, so I'm going to do, oops, I'm going to do this dot readline, just like that. Okay, but first I'm going to say console dot writeline. Please enter your size. And then I'm going to say in here, small, medium, large, or extra large. Okay, so it's expecting it's one of those. Okay, and then we're going to read in the size. So we're going to say here, and instead of right line, we're going to say right. It's going to come on the same line. Okay, now I'm going to say here, if size equal S or size equal capital S, we are going to say, I did that, but it did. It's not liking something that's in here. All right, so if it's a big or a small s, we're going to do a console dot write line. Your size is small. Should make sense, right? Else, if we put in a little m or a big M, then your size is medium. Otherwise, if you put in a lowercase l or an uppercase L, your size is large. Otherwise, if you put in an XL or you put in an XL, your size is extra large. Otherwise, we're going to put in unknown size. Okay? And I'm going to actually take this and put it into a loop so we can run it and test a bunch of these. All right? So I'm going to come in here and do this. I'm going to put in a for loop, and I'm going to put int LCV equals 0, LCV less than 10, we'll do it 10 times, plus plus LCV. Just like that. And then we're going to put this inside of curly braces. And I'm going to move all of this stuff over. If I wrote the code correctly, it should ask 10 times for our size. And if I got it wrong, you'll know when I know. So let me do a file, save all on here. Please enter your size. So I'll put in an S. Your size is small. Do it again. How about a big S? It's still small. A little m, a big M, a little L, a big L, a little XL, and a big XL. Those are all working. If I put in hello, says unknown size. If I leave it blank, it says unknown size. That's all working. That's the good news. It's all working. Every bit of this in here is working. But I want to show you an alternative way of writing this. Okay? So I'm copying all of it, and I'm going to paste it back in again. Now, before we go over it, I want to take everything we just did and comment all of that out. All right, now we're going to come in here and do this exactly like we just did it, except we're going to change this, and we're going to type in here switch on the size. Don't worry, we're going to get an error in here, but we'll fix it in a minute. Again, I'm going to move this over. Okay, and I'm going to move that over. Whoops, what did that do? So these should all be moved over to here. This should be moved over to there. Good. All right, now we'll fix the error in a moment, but I'm going to do a switch on size here. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say case of a little s or case of a big S, and we're going to print out your, we don't need curly braces here anymore, your size is small. And then we're going to put in the word break. All right, now I'm going to get rid of all of these except for the last one. and just copy this one down and keep making changes. All right, so this will now be M, and this will say your size is medium, and this will be L, and it will say your size is large, and this will be XL, and it will say your size is extra large, and it doesn't like, oh, and this will be the word default. All right, and that's going to have this, and again, it's going to say break, like that. Now, which is easier to read? All right, this one or this one? They should, again, should work exactly the same way. Think, do I not want this here? There we go. So let's try it again, but now we're running it using what's called a switch statement. Again, what is your size? Little s, big S. Little m, big M. Little l, big L. Little xl, big XL. Leave it blank, and hello. They all worked. Now, the ifs we've gone over already. If it's this, we do that and we skip the rest. If this isn't true, we check this. If the else if there that I've got in blue is true, we skip these three. If it's false, then we check this one. If this is true, we skip these two. If this is false, we check this one. Finally, if this one is false, we do this one. If this one is true, we do this one, and we skip that one. All right? Now, when you go in here and you work with a switch, it's much the same. But what we're saying here is 10 times we want you to ask, what is your size? And then we put the variable into size. This replaces all of those. This right there is replacing all of the ifs that we had in there. And the case is like saying if it's a lowercase s or it's an uppercase s, write that your size is small. You need the word break in there because that gets you out of the loop or out of the switch statement that you're in. If you left those breaks out and you put in an S, it would say your size is small, your size is medium, your size is large, your size is extra large, your size is unknown. It would run all of them. All right? It's called a fall through. You very rarely, if ever, want to do something like that. All right. So here's their switch, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Again, if your customer type is an R, you get a 10% discount. If it's a C, you get a 20% discount. The default is no discount. Okay? Let's go and look at one more of these and see when using a switch would be a terrible thing to do. When using a switch would be a terrible thing to do. All right? Now I'm going to grab this if statement or this for loop that we had in here. Okay, I'm going to copy it to the clipboard and I'm going to put it underneath this, but I'm going to grab this and comment this out. All right, now I'm going to come back in here, paste in that for loop, but I want to uncomment it. Okay, so let's uncomment that. All right. Now, I don't want to ask it this anymore. I want to say, what is or what was your grade? And we'll tell them it should be 0 through 100. Okay? Should be that. But you can never account for human stupidity. All right? So I'm going to come in here and say int grade equal console.readline. I can't do it like that. But I can say, I think this will work, integer.parse console.readline. And I think it's int.parse, int32. There we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to get rid of all this. And I'm going to say this. We're going to imagine 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 89 is a B, etc. So I'm going to come in here and say, if grade is greater than or equal to 90, console.writeLine, you got an A. All right. So let me fix this. Oops. So A, B, C, D, F. So this will be else. If the grade is greater than or equal to 80, you got a B. Else, if it's greater than or equal to 70, you got a C. Else, if it's greater than or equal to 60, you got a D. Otherwise, you got an F. All right, I'm going to put in here, I'm going to change this. Okay, and I'm going to say this. If your grade was greater than 100, or your grade was less than 0, which shouldn't be possible, you're going to do a console.writeLine invalid grade or invalid input, like that. Okay, so that should handle it. Let's see if we can put in 10 grades. I'm not keeping count of these or anything, but I want to see if this works. So enter grades. First, let's put one that's out of range, 222. All right, invalid input. You got a C, you got a D. So we got to fix that. All right, so that's wrong. How about 90? You got an A and a C and a D. Well, that's wrong. Let's fix this right away because it's always telling me you got a C and a D. That should be an else, and it wasn't. And that should be an else, and it wasn't. All right, so that's on me. So let's run it again. First, let's put in something out of range. Invalid input. Okay, 100. You got an A. 90. You still got an A. 89. You got a B. 80. You got a B. 79. You got a C. 70. You got a 70. You got a C. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's put in 60. You got a D. 50. You got an F. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now it doesn't matter. So we'll put in another invalid input. Now that worked. That worked. It's exactly what we wanted. Now let's talk about why we wouldn't want this to be in an if statement or to be in a switch. All right. because if you put it in a switch, this is what you'd have to do. I'm actually going to write this. This is a pain in the butt. But first, let me comment all of this out. And let me come down to here and paste this in. All right, now let me uncomment. Let's see, so that would be in here. So I have to uncomment this. I'm not going to do all of it because it would just take too long. What do I mean? Well, if we come in here and we do just what we did before, what was your grade? And then we parse the grade. Okay, let me bring that in. I'm going to have to uncomment that in just a second. All right, so let me uncomment both these two lines. Okay, and now I'm going to do a switch on grade. Okay, I have to change this so it looks like this. I'm going to change this from your size is to your grade is B, C, D, F, and we need one more of these. And this is going to be, that'll be an F. This one will be unknown grade. Okay, why am I getting all these errors? Because this is a number and I'm trying to compare it to a string. So I have to come in here and actually do this. 100, 99, I have to list every possibility. So 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99. So your grade is A. Now you see what a pain in the butt that is already. And I'm going to come down. I'm going to put it all in here just so you, whoops, let's see, copy. Now this will change to your grade is B, but this will have to be 89. Oops, I don't need that one now, to be honest with you. So this will be 89. I have here 100. 99, this should be 98. Okay, so this is 89. This is 88, 87, 86, 85. I've never done all of these before, but 83, 82, 81, 80, 80, like that. Your grade is a B. Now, I got to copy them again. Copy that down. Let's just get rid of all of the rest of these. Okay, so now this will be 79, 78, 77, 76, 75, 74, 73, 72, 71, and 70, and your grade is a C. Look at how long this is already. There's the 90s, the 80s, and the 70s. So then this is 6. All right, your grade is a D. Now I'd have to actually come in here and write 0 through 59. I could do that, but you get the idea. But look at how big this is already. There's our A grade. So instead of a single if, we now have 11 things in here. Here's our B's. We now have 10 things in here. There's our C's. We have 10 things in there. There's our D's. We have 10 things in there. All right. So I could go and write 60 more of these that went from 0 to 59 and say your grade is F. I'm going to leave them off. I'll just put a couple of them in here just so you see what I'm talking about. So again, I'd have to come in here and say 59, 58, 57, 56, 55, 54, 53, 52, 51, 50. Let's do them all. Grab these, and down below this will now be 49, 48, 47, 46, 45, 44, 43, 42, 41, 40. We've got our 30s. Okay, then we've got our 20s. Then we've got our teens. Give me a break. Finally, we've got our single digits. And I hope, if nothing else, I've shown you why, when you need to list all values, you wouldn't do that. So there's my A's, there's my B's, there's my C's, there's my D's. So there's 41 in there. Then there are 60 in here. So I had to list 101 things before I got down to the default. Now this should still work. All right, you get the idea. So I've now shown you the same programs written both using if statements and using switch statements. Now we could have even gone back to this one that we did in here, and we could have rewritten that one as a switch. It would have been fine. Let's see if we can do that one. So I'm going to comment out this monstrosity that I just put in here. So I'm going to comment that out. All right, I'm going to come back to right near the top where I had the first thing that we wrote for our odds and evens. All right, and I'm going to use the for loop. And where did that end? It was down here. Odd count, even count. So I'm going to do that to right here. Copy. So I'm starting in line 50 here. So starting with line 50, I want to uncomment this. Well, I think I did it. So here's my for loop. I don't need a do in there anymore. All right. Okay, and I've got the random thing, so that's all in there. You move this over. Okay, for loop, do this. Now we'll fix this in a minute. Now there's no while in here because it's a for loop. So we get that out of there. We don't need this anymore because we're changing it inside of our loop, so we don't need that. But we do need all this. Okay, so now I get the result. So I can switch on the result. Case 1 and case 0. I'm just going to copy the code in here. So if it's a 1, we want to write that the number was odd and add 1 to our odds count. Looks good. And if it is a 0, we want to do the same thing but with evens. So that is everything. We no longer need, any of this if stuff. And it should still work. Okay, let's see. I could have missed something very easily the way that I code. So you see it doesn't like something in here. So let's see what it doesn't like. Invalid parenthesis in here. Console.readline, it doesn't like that. Well, that's not what it doesn't like, but there's something else in there that it's having a problem with. So let's see. Okay, I think. Okay. Whoa. Well, let's just come in here and there, that is. So I don't think it needs anything here. I don't think it needs this either. All right. Now I had a switch, so let's see. Paren, curly brace, 1, 2, 3 curly braces here. Okay, so it's going to need two more curly braces after this. That should now be correct. Okay, so now we have rewritten these grades, but we rewrote it using a switch statement. I'm sorry if it's a little confusing, but let's see now what it looks like. Well, all it's saying is odd count equals 0 and even count equals 0. So it's skipping everything. So let's see. Okay, it's coming in here. Oh, it's got to be 1. Okay. Okay. We even got a 0. 34 and 16. 75 odd, odd, 55 odd, 19 odd, 78 even. So now I've written many of the same programs in here using both an if statement and a switch statement. That was my goal in here, was to go in and do that. The break gets you out of either a loop or out of a switch statement. We'll look at continue in just a bit, which does something else. Now, how to code switch expressions rather. There are shortcuts that have been added in here. What do I mean? Well, rather than you needing the word in here default, and rather than you needing the word break, you can put this in and then put it in with what's called a lambda expression. So in other words, with what I just put in there, with what I just put in, I should be able to, I should be able to go in there and rewrite this. So with this case 1 like this, all right, I want to rewrite it so it looks like that. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to comment that out, which is going to give me an error. That's okay. But I'm going to say 1, make sure I'm using the right syntax. And now I don't need break. All right. Now, it doesn't like this. And it's telling me well, let's look and see what it's telling me. So I have to change a bunch of this. So I have to change this to from switch on this like we have right there. If you notice, okay, this should now say, so let me take this, comment it out, say result equal so what am I trying to do here? I have to do something like this. Int answer equal result what is it? Result switch equal result switch like that. Oh my God, that's ugly. I'm not even going to keep that. You can take a look and we will go over it in class. If I forget, please remind me. This is the newer syntax. I have not used it because I'm so used to using the other one. All right. So this again will be case. Oops. Just get rid of that. And uncomment that. There we go. And we have no more break there. So there's when the language evolves, or as the language evolves, Sometimes they will talk to people who are using it and say, how could we make this better? I think this is confusing. You use that instead of default. You use that instead of using the word case. Now, if you like that better, you can use that. It's not a problem. Again, we will look at that in class. Pattern matching is discussed later on in the chapter. We did pattern matching. Those of you who were in the JavaScript class, we did pattern matching in there. So you should know what I'm talking about. And let's hold off on that as well. We will talk about it in class. The conditional operator, this is kind of a cool operator. We sort of talked about this without talking about it. What do I mean? Let's go back to our program. And here we got a switch, which worked fine. Let's see. I just want to show you a fairly simple example of this. So I'm going to go and comment all of this out. And I'm going to come down near the bottom. Hopefully I don't have any errors in here at the bottom. Good. And I'm going to say this. Int number 1 equals 17. Int number 2, that should have been a 1. Number 2 equals 54. 52, fine. Int max. And now I'm going to say here, if number 1 greater than or equal to number 2, all right, max equal number 1. All right, if number 1 is greater than or equal to number 2, number 1. All right, max equal number 1. Else, max equal number 2. Then we're going to say here, console dot write line, what happened there? Come on. Max equal plus max. All right, and if I did write that correctly, it should come back in here and say max equal 52. Let's see if indeed it does. Max equal 52. Good, it worked. All right, but another way I could do this in one line as opposed to all that. All right, I'm going to replace those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines with one line. And that's going to be this. Max equal, and I'm going to put in there number 1 greater than or equal to number 2, question mark number 1, colon number 2. And it should work the same way. File, save all, run it, max equal 52. What this does, this should be pretty straightforward by now. This says, hey, run this. If it's true, do what comes after the question mark. If it's false, do what comes after the colon. Okay, so it's just another way of writing this. All right, then they have an enhanced version of the invoice app. All right, now they've got different customer types in here. So what they end up doing is based on the customer type, they do the percentage based on the customer type. Okay, now that would involve way too much manipulation from what we have, but we could add a customer type into our example if we wanted to do that. We'll go over this in class. All right, loops, again, we've talked about it. I showed you the while loop. I showed you the for loop. We've gone over several examples now. I showed you the break. What the continue does is it, notice here, this says if I is less than 4, continue. So when it does this, if I is less than 4, it skips this and it jumps right back up to the top. So with a continue, you can jump right to the start of the loop. All right. Yeah, you can debug. Let's take a look. This is a future value program. I think we already wrote this, but we didn't put the code in. So the code for the form, the only code we need this code right here. Okay, so let's put that code into our example that we had previously. All right, and will that be it then? Yes, it is. Okay, so got a phone call, so just pardon me for a moment here. I'll tell you what, I made the decision that I'm going to stop right here. We're already at an hour and 20 minutes, but I'm going to grab all of this code and I am going to put it into my program and we will look at it at a later time. Okay, so I'm going to stop with chapter 5 right now. We're already well over an hour.